They say every house keeps secrets. I just never thought mine would breathe. I had the perfect life. A loving husband. A beautiful home. And peace I thought would last forever. Until one ordinary afternoon, my phone rang. It was the cleaning lady. Her voice was trembling. "Ma'am," she whispered. "There's someone in your house." That call, that single moment, shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my past, and myself. I never used to believe in fear that lives in walls, the kind that breathes when you're alone and stares when you turn away. But that belief ended the day my phone rang. It was 10:37 a.m. I was halfway through a crossword puzzle, sipping lukewarm coffee when my new cleaning lady, Nora, called. She had only been working for me for 2 days. Her voice trembled so badly I almost didn't recognize it. "Mrs. Dalton?" she whispered. "Yes, Nora, is everything all right?" "There's someone in your house." The pen fell from my hand. "What do you mean someone's in my house?" "Stephen's at work." I don't know," she stammered. "I heard something. Above me, in the attic. Heavy footsteps. I thought you said no one else was home." For a moment, I thought she must be mistaken. Our attic hadn't been opened in years. Stephen always said it was full of junk and old insulation. Still, the fear in her voice was unmistakable. "Nora, go outside," I told her firmly. "Right now. Wait for me by the mailbox. I'm coming home." I sped through every red light on the way back. My mind raced through possibilities. A break-in, a squatter, a raccoon maybe. But underneath all the logic, something else crept in. A darker thought I couldn't name. When I pulled into the driveway, Nora was standing on the curb, clutching her phone, pale as paper. "I swear I heard footsteps," she said, like someone pacing slowly. Then it stopped. I got scared and came outside. I nodded, trying to calm her. "You did the right thing." We entered the house together. It was silent, too silent. Every floorboard seemed to groan beneath our feet, like the house itself was holding its breath. I grabbed a broom handle, ridiculous as a weapon, and pointed it upward toward the attic door. Stephen had always kept that door locked. Today it was slightly open. My pulse thundered in my ears. I nudged it wider. Dust fell like snowflakes in the thin shaft of sunlight. No sound, no movement, just the faint smell of something old. Stale, like forgotten memories. We searched every room. Nothing. The attic was empty. Stephen came home 30 minutes later, irritated that I'd called him. "For God's sake, Ellen," he said, throwing his coat on the chair. "You scared the poor woman for no reason. Probably rats. You know how old this place is." "Then why was the door open?" I demanded. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Maybe I forgot to latch it. You've been paranoid ever since retirement. You need something to do. Maybe start gardening again." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something about his tone, the calmness, almost rehearsed, made my stomach tighten. That night, while he slept beside me, I heard it too. The slow, deliberate sound of footsteps above our bedroom ceiling. The next morning, I confronted him again. "I heard it last night," I said, setting down my coffee cup hard enough to spill a few drops. "There's something up there." Stephen didn't look up from his newspaper. "Old houses make noises, Ellen. You're just bored." I hated how he said it. "You're just bored." Like my feelings were a hobby, an inconvenience. Still, I said nothing. Years of marriage had taught me silence was easier. But later that afternoon, as I cleaned the kitchen, I noticed something strange. A plate of food missing from the counter. I could have sworn I'd left it there an hour ago, and upstairs the attic door was closed again. I called Nora that evening to apologize for scaring her. "I'm so sorry about today," I said. She hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Dalton, I'm not sure I can come back." "Because of what happened?" "No, because of what I saw when I left." My throat tightened. "What did you see?" "There was someone at the attic window," she whispered. Watching me drive away, that night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound. When it came, the soft creak of floorboards above me, I didn't move. But my heart did. It dropped like a stone. I rolled over and glanced at Stephen. He was fast asleep, peaceful, too peaceful. And for the first time in my marriage, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure if the danger was outside or lying right next to me. When I first met Stephen Dalton, he wasn't a best-selling author. He was a quiet man with ink-stained fingers and the kind of smile that made you believe you were the only person in the room. He'd written one short story for a local magazine. I still remember the title, The House Beneath the Moon. We met at a library reading. I was 24, shy, and fresh out of college. He was 30, charming in that mysterious, brooding way writers often are. When he read his story aloud, his voice filled the room. Soft, deliberate, hypnotic. Afterward, he approached me and asked, "Do you believe stories can haunt people, Ellen?" I laughed, not knowing that one day his stories would haunt me for real. We married a year later. Life with Stephen was comfortable, predictable. We bought this old colonial house on the outskirts of Portland. Creaky floors, wide windows, the kind of place that had character. He said it inspired him to write. And for a while it did. The first novel that made him famous, The Silent Room, came out 3 years after we moved in. It was a sensation, dark, elegant, tragic. Critics called him a master of psychological suspense. Our lives changed overnight. Book tours, interviews, awards. Money started coming in. People envied us. The perfect couple, the writer and his devoted wife. But they didn't see the quiet parts, the ones that crept in after the lights went out. Stephen would lock himself in his study for hours, sometimes days. When I brought him meals, he barely spoke. He hated anyone touching his manuscripts. Once I made the mistake of tidying his desk. He screamed so loud I dropped a glass. The veins in his neck bulged, his face twisted with rage I'd never seen before. Then, as quickly as it came, it was gone. He apologized, kissed my forehead, and said he was just under pressure. That's when I started to notice the attic door was always locked. Over the years, I grew used to the sound of his typewriter, the rhythmic clacking echoing through the ceiling late into the night. But after he switched to writing on a computer, I still heard it sometimes. The faint click, click, click when Stephen was asleep beside me. I told myself it was my imagination. After all, I was retired now, alone most of the day, and my mind liked to wander. Still, little things began to stand out. Crumbs on the counter, a light left on in the attic hallway, the smell of burnt toast when I hadn't cooked. Then there was the portrait. It hung in his office. A charcoal drawing of a young woman with kind eyes and dark hair. I'd asked him about it once years ago. "That's no one," he'd said too quickly. "Just a character from one of my stories." But as I stared at it now, something about her looked achingly familiar. The curve of her lips, the shape of her nose, and then it hit me. She looked exactly like Marlena, my sister. Marlena had disappeared when I was 16. We were inseparable growing up. She was older by 2 years, bolder, wilder. She used to write stories in secret notebooks and hide them under her bed. Beautiful stories, ones that felt alive. Then one summer night she was just gone. The police said she probably ran away. My parents believed it. I didn't. There was no note, no trace. Just her favorite notebook missing. I hadn't spoken her name in years. Not until I saw her face on Stephen's wall. When I confronted him about it, he looked startled, just for a second. Then he smiled. "You're imagining things again, Ellen. You've been reading too many of my drafts." He turned away, but I saw it. That flicker of fear behind his calm expression. Like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to. After that day, I couldn't stop noticing small cracks in our perfect life. Stephen always kept a key on him, a small brass one. I thought it was for his office, until one night I saw him slip upstairs at 2 a.m., unlock the attic door, and disappear inside. He stayed there for nearly an hour. When he came back down, he smelled faintly of smoke and old books. The next morning, I asked what he'd been doing. "Just cleaning out boxes," he said without looking up from his coffee. But I knew him too well. He only lied when the truth was unbearable. Then came the night that changed everything. I woke to a faint tapping sound. Not footsteps this time, tapping. Like someone knocking softly from inside a wall. It came in threes. Then silence. Then again, I sat up, holding my breath. Stephen didn't stir. The sound came from the attic. Slowly I got out of bed, my heart hammering in my chest. I opened the hallway door and listened. Tap, tap, tap. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone trying to send a message. I reached the attic steps and froze. Light was seeping out from the cracks under the door. Stephen's brass key glinted in the lock. Left there, for once. My hand trembled as I touched it, but before I could turn it, I heard something else. A soft voice, hoarse, broken, whispering my name, Ellen. I ran back to the bedroom, shaking Stephen awake. There's someone up there. I heard them. They said my name. He shot up, eyes wide, not with surprise, but with something else. Fear. He forced a laugh. You're dreaming, sweetheart. Go back to sleep. But his voice cracked on the last word. He didn't go back to sleep that night. Neither did I. I didn't tell Stephen I'd heard my name whispered that night. I wanted to. God, I almost did. But something inside me, some small voice I hadn't listened to in years, told me not to. Instead, I smiled, made his breakfast, and pretended everything was fine. That's what wives of famous men do. They pretend. But I wasn't fine. Every creak in the house felt like a message. Every shadow looked like a secret. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Nora, the cleaning lady, and asked if she could come back, just for one more afternoon. I'll pay you double, I said. I just need help with the attic. There was a long pause on the line. I told you, Mrs. Dalton, she whispered. I can't go back in that house. Something was wrong there. I could feel it. Then she hung up. I stood in the kitchen, holding the silent phone, staring at my reflection in the glass window. My face looked pale. Older. Like the house had already started eating away at me. That night, after Stephen went to bed, I made a decision. I was going to find out what was in that attic, with or without his permission. I borrowed his brass key while he slept. It was warm from his pocket, heavy in my palm. I crept up the hallway stairs, the air growing colder with each step. When I reached the attic door, I paused. The house was utterly still. No wind, no sound, just the faint hum of something electrical, like a light left on. I slid the key into the lock and turned it. The sound echoed through the hallway like thunder. Inside, the air smelled thick, musty, stale, but also human. I flicked on the light. It flickered once, twice, then steadied. Boxes lined the walls, each neatly labeled in Stephen's handwriting. Old drafts, notes, research. But beneath the smell of dust, I caught something else. Soap and food. I walked deeper inside and noticed a blanket folded in the corner, next to an empty bowl. A faint indentation on the floor, like someone had been sitting there. My breath caught. There had been someone up here. Then, a faint sound. A whisper of movement behind the far stack of boxes. I froze. Hello? I called out. My voice cracked. Silence. Then a soft scrape, like bare feet against wood. I took a hesitant step forward, heart hammering. Who's there? Something shifted behind the boxes, and then a hand. Pale, trembling, reaching out. Before I could move, the attic door slammed behind me. I screamed, fumbling for the handle. Locked. The light flickered again. My pulse roared in my ears. Then from the darkness behind the boxes came a voice. Soft, fragile, familiar. Don't scream. Please, I spun around. Who are you? The voice trembled. He'll hear you. He always hears everything. For a second I couldn't breathe. That voice, one broken as it was, hit something deep in me. It was the voice from my dreams, from my childhood, the voice that used to read me stories under the covers with a flashlight. Marlena, I whispered. The air seemed to stop moving. Then a sob. Ellen. I dropped to my knees. My hands shook as I crawled toward the sound. And there she was, hiding behind the boxes, hair long and gray, eyes sunken but unmistakable. My sister. Her wrists thin as twigs, her face ghostly white. Marlena, what? She flinched at the sound of my voice, glancing toward the door. Quiet, she begged. If he knows you're here, he'll lock you out again. Or worse. My mind was spinning. None of it made sense. My sister, my dead sister, was alive, hiding in our attic? And Stephen knew? I reached for her hand. It was ice cold. "Who did this to you?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. Tears filled her eyes. He said he'd let me go once he finished. Once he had enough of my stories. But he never did. My heart cracked open. "Your stories?" She nodded weakly. "He took my notebooks. Said he'd publish them for me. Said no one would read a woman's words unless they came from his name. And then he locked me here. Said it was for my own good. The air left my lungs. Stephen's novels, the tone, the rhythm, the phrasing, they were all Marlena's. I recognized it now. The soul of her writing, the books that made him rich, were hers. Suddenly, footsteps echoed on the stairs. Heavy, slow. Marlena's eyes widened. "He's coming," she whispered. "Please, go." I scrambled toward the door, twisting the handle. It wouldn't budge. The footsteps grew louder, then Stephen's voice, calm, steady, chillingly gentle. "Ellen, what are you doing up there?" I froze, staring at the door. "Open it," I said. "Why would I do that?" he replied, his tone dripping with amusement. "You shouldn't be in places that don't belong to you." Something inside me snapped. "You lied to me," I shouted. "All these years and you lied." Silence. Then softly, "You weren't supposed to find out this way." The light went out. I don't remember running down the stairs. I just remember the dark, his voice behind me, calm as ever. "You always loved her more, didn't you?" When I reached the living room, my hands were trembling so hard I could barely dial 911, but I didn't press call, because I knew if I did, Stephen would hear, and he still had the key. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the house felt like Stephen's footsteps coming closer, every whisper of wind like Marlena's voice echoing from the attic. By sunrise, I'd packed a small bag. My hands shook as I tucked my phone inside, along with the old photo of Marlena I'd found in one of Stephen's drawers years ago. I wasn't leaving, not yet, but I needed proof. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. Proof that my sister had been here. Stephen was in the kitchen, humming as he brewed coffee. Calm, ordinary, as if nothing had happened. "Morning," he said, looking up. "Rough night?" I studied his face. That same gentle smile, the one that had once made me feel safe. But now it just looked like a mask. "Did you go into the attic last night?" I asked. He didn't even flinch. "No, you really need to stop obsessing over that place, Ellen. It's dusty and dangerous." "Then why do you keep it locked?" He laughed lightly. "Old habits. You know I keep my old drafts up there. Can't risk losing decades of work." I wanted to scream. But instead I smiled, the same fake, polite smile I'd worn for years. "You're right, dear," I said softly. "I'll let it go." And as he kissed my cheek before heading to his study, I made a silent promise. I wasn't letting anything go. The moment the door to his study closed, I slipped upstairs again. The brass key wasn't on the nightstand, but I remembered where he kept the spare. Inside the hollow of his desk drawer, beneath an envelope labeled royalty statements. My pulse hammered as I turned the key in the attic lock once more. The door creaked open. Light filtered in through the small window, revealing the same cold, dusty room. Except now, Marlena was gone. Her blanket lay folded neatly. The bowl had been washed and set aside. It was as if she'd vanished into thin air. I searched every corner, calling her name in a whisper. "Marlena, it's me. It's Ellen." No answer. Then I noticed something new. A small wooden box sitting on the floor near the wall. Inside were yellowed pages, brittle from age. I picked one up and froze. The handwriting. I knew it instantly. Looped, graceful. The same as the letters Marlena used to write me when we were girls. At the top of the first page, "The Silent Room" by Marlena Grace. My stomach turned. That was Stephen's debut novel, the one that had made him famous. Page after page, it was the same story. Word for word, he hadn't just locked her away. He'd stolen everything she ever wrote. Tears blurred my vision. I sank to the floor, clutching the manuscript to my chest. All the years I'd watched him win awards, give speeches, sign books, all of it built on her suffering. The door behind me creaked. I spun around, my heart leaping. Stephen stood there, leaning casually against the frame, coffee mug in hand. "Looking for something?" he asked. I stumbled to my feet, clutching the papers. You did this to her. You took her life," he sighed, setting his mug down on a nearby box. "I see you've finally met your sister." The way he said it, so calm, almost amused, made my blood run cold. "Why?" I demanded. "Why would you do that to her?" He tilted his head, studying me like one of his readers. "You wouldn't understand. Marlena was fragile. She needed guidance, structure. I gave her that." "By locking her in an attic?" I shouted. His eyes hardened. "I saved her. You have no idea what she was like. The moods, the delusions. She begged me to help her. I gave her purpose. My name protected her work." He took a step closer. "And we were happy. For a time, I stepped back." "You're sick." His smile faded. "I gave her everything. And then you came along, with your questions, your doubts. You've always ruined things you didn't understand, Ellen." He reached toward me, but I backed away, clutching the manuscript. "She's gone," I said, my voice trembling. "She escaped last night." For the first time, I saw fear flicker across his face. "No," he said quietly. "She wouldn't." But I could tell. He didn't know where she was. And that terrified him. "I'm calling the police," I said, my voice shaking but steady. He chuckled, a cold, hollow sound. "And tell them what? That your dead sister magically reappeared after 30 years? That your famous husband kidnapped her to write novels? Do you hear how insane that sounds?" He took another step closer. I could smell the bitter coffee on his breath. "Give me the pages, Ellen." I clutched them tighter. "No." His expression shifted, the charm gone, the mask cracking. He lunged. I stumbled backward, slamming into a stack of boxes. Papers flew everywhere. He grabbed my wrist, twisting it hard enough to make me cry out. I said, "Give them to me." And then, from behind him, a sound. A low, trembling voice. "Leave her alone." Stephen froze. I looked past him. Marlena stood in the doorway, pale but defiant, a heavy metal rod trembling in her hand. I started, but she shook her head. Stephen turned slowly, his voice soft again. "Marlena, please, you don't know what you're doing." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know exactly what I'm doing." She swung. The rod connected with a sickening crack. Stephen collapsed to the floor, motionless. I rushed to her side, grabbing her shaking hands. "We have to go. Now." She nodded, her breathing ragged. We fled down the stairs together, out into the cold morning light. My heart pounded so hard I could barely think. For the first time in 30 years, we were both outside that house. Free. But I knew it wasn't over. Stephen wasn't the kind of man who stayed down for long. The road blurred through my tears as I drove. Marlena sat in the passenger seat, trembling, clutching my jacket around her frail shoulders. Her hands were raw and thin, bones wrapped in paper. She hadn't spoken since we left the house. Not a word. Just stared out the window as the early morning mist rolled past. I pulled into an old rest stop off Highway 6, far enough that I couldn't see the house anymore. When I killed the engine, the silence pressed down on us. "Marlena," I whispered, "you're safe now." She turned toward me, her eyes hollow but alert. "Safe?" she repeated softly, almost to herself. "I haven't felt safe in 30 years. We sat there for what felt like forever. I wanted to hold her, to tell her everything would be okay. But how do you comfort someone who's been erased from the world? Finally, she spoke. "Do you still write?" The question startled me. "Write? No, not for years." She nodded slowly. "I used to write every day, even in the dark. Even when he took away my paper, I'd write in my head. Every night, I'd tell myself the same story, the story of leaving." Her voice cracked. "But I never left." Tears welled in my eyes. "You did now. You're with me. We'll go to the police. They'll believe us." She gave a weak, broken laugh. "Ellen, I'm a ghost. No one even remembers I existed." Her words hit me like ice water. She was right. My parents were gone. Her records long lost. To the world, Marlena Grace had vanished decades ago. To prove she was alive, I'd have to prove everything Stephen had done, and that meant going back for evidence. I called 911 anyway. My voice shook as I told them my husband had attacked me and that my missing sister was alive. The dispatcher's tone shifted from polite disbelief to careful concern when I mentioned the attic. "We're sending someone," she said. "Stay where you are." But I knew Stephen. He wasn't the kind of man to wait for the police. An hour later, the sirens came, but so did he. I saw his car before I heard it. The dark blue sedan rolling up the road, slow and deliberate. Marlena's hand gripped my arm. "He found us." "Stay in the car," I whispered. I stepped out, heart hammering, clutching the old manuscript I'd taken from the attic. Stephen got out of his car, holding a towel against his forehead, a dark stain spreading through the fabric. His eyes were wild, unfocused. "Ellen," he said softly, almost lovingly, "you shouldn't have left. You've ruined everything." I took a step back. "It's over, Stephen. The police are on their way," he smiled. "The police?" His voice was eerily calm. "Do you really think anyone will believe your little story? A missing sister conveniently reappears just when you start hearing noises in the attic? You'll sound unhinged." He took another step closer. "Where is she?" "Gone," I lied, his jaw tightened. "You think you can hide her from me?" "She's my creation." That word, creation, made my skin crawl. "She's a human being, Stephen." He sneered. "She was a muse. Broken, beautiful, but useless without me. I gave her meaning. I felt something inside me harden. "No," I said quietly. "You stole her meaning." Behind me, I heard the faint click of a car door opening. Marlena's voice, trembling but fierce. "She gave you everything, Stephen." He turned toward her. And for a brief moment, I saw the man I once knew falter. "Marlena, please. You don't understand. You were happy. I was trapped," she snapped, her voice trembling with rage. "You locked me away so no one could outshine you. You made me write until my hands bled, and you called it love." Her voice broke into sobs, but she didn't back down. "You stole my life, my words, my soul." Stephen's composure shattered. He lunged toward her. Before I could move, headlights flared behind us, red and blue flashing through the fog. Police cars. He froze, caught in the lights like an animal. The next minutes blurred. Officers shouting, hands pulling me back. Stephen pinned to the ground, shouting about his work and his art. Marlena stood motionless, watching him. Not angry, not afraid, just empty. When it was over, one officer gently led her to the ambulance. "Ma'am, we'll take care of you," he said softly. But as they placed a blanket around her, she looked at me and whispered, "He said he'd bury me if I ever tried to leave." I took her hand. "He can't hurt you anymore." Her fingers tightened around mine. "Promise me, Ellen. Promise you'll tell them the truth." "I promise," I said. That night, at the hospital, I sat by her bed. She was so thin, so fragile. But her eyes, those same eyes from my childhood, still held a spark. She looked at me and smiled weakly. "You were always the brave one." I shook my head, tears slipping down my cheeks. "No, Marlena, you were." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "He kept all my stories up there. Every single one. You have to show the world," I nodded. "I will." Her hand slipped from mine as her eyes fluttered shut. The monitor beside her beeped softly, steady, fragile, like a reminder that after 3 decades of silence, her story was finally being heard. But I couldn't shake one thought. If she'd lived all those years locked away, what else had he hidden? Outside the hospital window, dawn began to break, soft gold spilling across the sky. It should have felt like a new beginning, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end, because every ghost leaves something behind, and Marlena's ghost wasn't done haunting me yet. The police took Stephen away in handcuffs that night. I should have felt relief. I'd waited decades for justice I didn't even know I needed. But as the taillights disappeared into the fog, all I felt was hollow, because the truth doesn't heal you. It just opens wounds that never fully close. 2 days later, I went back to the house. The crime scene tape fluttered in the wind like a yellow warning. Do not cross. But it was my home, my prison, My sister's tomb, I stepped inside. The air still smelled like him, the faint trace of his cologne and old paper. The attic door hung open, and sunlight streamed down the narrow stairs. For the first time, I climbed them without fear. The attic was smaller than I remembered, or maybe my memory had shrunk it to something survivable. The cot was still there, the typewriter, the stacks of handwritten pages, each one signed in Stephen's name. But on the very top pile I found something different. A notebook, small, frayed, and written in a familiar hand, Marlena's. I opened it carefully. The first line read, "If someone finds this, tell Ellen I never stopped writing about her." My breath caught in my throat. I sat on the floor and began reading. Each page was a story. Our childhood, our parents, the night she disappeared. Her words were raw, beautiful, and filled with grief. But the last entry stopped my heart cold. He says he'll end me soon. I can't tell if he means my life or my stories, but I'll keep writing until he takes the last page from me. Tears blurred my vision. That's when I heard it. A faint creak downstairs. My heart stopped. The police had changed the locks. No one should have been inside. I froze, every nerve on fire. Then, a voice, low, familiar. "Ellen?" For a moment, I thought it was in my head. But then the footsteps came closer. Slow, deliberate, familiar. Stephen. I backed toward the window, clutching Marlena's notebook. He appeared at the top of the stairs, his face bruised but smiling. "Did you really think it was that easy?" he said softly. "They released me. Not enough evidence, Ellen. They called it a misunderstanding. My knees weakened. No, it couldn't be." He took another step closer, eyes glinting in the dim light. "I told them you were confused, that you'd been under stress. They believed me, just like everyone always does." I stumbled back, hitting the desk. "Stay away from me," he tilted his head. "You shouldn't have brought her out. You destroyed us both." His calmness was worse than rage. I saw the monster beneath the man, the same cold, calculated control he'd used for years. "I'm calling the police," I said, fumbling for my phone. But he moved faster, knocking it from my hand. "Stop pretending you're the victim," he hissed. "You love this life. The fame, the comfort. You never questioned where it came from. Because I trusted you," I shouted. He smiled, and for a second I saw pride in his eyes. That's what made it so easy. The attic felt smaller now, air thinning, walls closing in. He stepped closer, and I realized there was nowhere left to go. "Give me the notebook," he said quietly. "It's mine." "No," I said, clutching it to my chest. "It's hers. It always was." He lunged, and something inside me broke. All those years of silence, of smiling through suspicion, of believing his lies, it erupted like fire. I swung the heavy typewriter from the desk. It hit him square in the shoulder. He stumbled back, shouting in pain. I ran, down the stairs, through the hallway, my breath ragged, my vision swimming. Behind me his footsteps thundered. "Ellen!" he bellowed. "You'll regret this." I burst out the front door into the sunlight. My car keys shook in my hands as I tried to unlock the door. But before I could, his hand grabbed my arm. We struggled, him pulling, me kicking, until the sound of sirens filled the air again. This time, for real. 2 officers jumped from their cruiser. "Drop her!" one shouted. Stephen froze. For a brief second his eyes met mine, not with hatred, but disbelief. Like he couldn't understand how I'd slipped out of his control. Then they took him down, the same way they had before, only this time I knew he wasn't coming back. Hours later, at the station, they told me what happened. After his release, Stephen broke into evidence storage, stole his manuscript copies, and fled. When they caught him this time, they found something else in his car: forged letters, fake journals, and even a confession draft he'd planned to rewrite. He'd been trying to twist the story, make Marlena look insane. Even in ruin, he wanted control of the narrative. But he lost it the moment she wrote her truth. That night, I sat alone in the guest room at a friend's house. The house was quiet, too quiet. I opened Marlena's notebook again, reading the final entry by candlelight. There was a short poem at the end. You stole my light, but I kept the flame. Even hidden, even broken, I remained. One day my words will find the air, and they will burn brighter than your name. I closed the notebook and whispered, they already have. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. But this time, I wasn't afraid of the noise, because the ghost in the attic wasn't haunting me anymore. She was finally free. The trial lasted 3 months. 3 months of reporters outside my door, flashing cameras, and whispered questions that cut like knives. Every day, I walked into that courtroom carrying Marlena's notebook. The last thing she ever wrote, the proof of her stolen life. Every day, Stephen sat across from me, expressionless, his expensive lawyer doing all the talking. He didn't look like a monster in there. He looked like the man I married, calm, intelligent, even sympathetic. And that terrified me more than anything. The prosecutors showed everything they had, the fingerprints in the attic, the DNA on the old dishes, the hidden room that had been modified with locks from the outside. They found dozens of drafts, stories written in Marlena's handwriting, edited and published under Stephen's name. But what silenced the courtroom was a recording I hadn't known existed. The cleaning lady. Her call to 911 that first day had been saved. They played it aloud, her trembling voice saying, "There's someone in the house." I heard a woman crying upstairs. The jury listened in stunned silence. For the first time, I saw Stephen flinch. When I took the stand, I told them everything, about the noises, the lies, the attic, and the years I believed I was married to a genius. My hands shook as I said Marlena's name. She wasn't a ghost, I told them. She was my sister, and he made her disappear. When I finished, the courtroom was silent, except for the faint scratching of pens and the quiet sobs of a few spectators. 2 weeks later, the verdict came, guilty on all counts, kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, fraud, and criminal plagiarism. He was sentenced to life in prison. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty, because justice doesn't bring back the years she lost. It just stops the bleeding. After the trial, I took Marlena's ashes to the coast, the place we'd loved as children. The wind was cold that day, the kind that stings your face and makes your eyes water. I stood on the cliffs, the sea roaring below, holding the urn in my hands. "You're free now," I whispered. "Your words are free too." I opened the urn, and the ashes lifted into the wind, carried out toward the horizon, gray against a pale pink sky. For a moment, I could almost hear her laugh, soft, free. A month later, I published her stories, every single one. Under her name, Marlena Grace, The Ghost in the Attic, collected works. It became an instant bestseller. Not because of the scandal, but because people felt her in every word. Her writing was raw and alive, filled with pain, beauty, and hope. In interviews, I told the truth, that her words had been stolen, but her voice could not be silenced. That monsters can hide behind love, and victims can find strength in truth. Every copy sold felt like a heartbeat restored. Every reader felt like one more person who now knew her story. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a simple note. "You made her immortal." There was no signature, but I knew who it was from. The cleaning lady. The woman who made the call that changed everything. I smiled through my tears. Because sometimes, justice begins with the smallest act of courage. Someone simply refusing to look away. I moved out of the old house soon after. I couldn't stay there. Not with those memories in the walls. But before I left, I went up to the attic one last time. The light through the window fell across the floorboards, dust dancing like tiny ghosts. I placed one final thing there. A single page from Marlena's notebook, framed in glass. It read, "The truth may be trapped in darkness for years, but it always finds its way to the light." As I locked the door behind me, I realized something. I hadn't just uncovered a crime. I had freed myself too. For 30 years, I lived under the weight of a lie. believing in a perfect life built on someone else's pain. Now, every time I hear a creak in the house, I don't feel fear. I feel her not haunting me, guiding me, reminding me that even the quietest voices deserve to be heard. Years later, they made a film about our story. The producers wanted to call it The Stolen Words, but I asked them to change it. Call it The Ghost in the Attic, I said. That's who she was, and that's how she'll be remembered. Not as a victim, but as a voice that refused to die.